And hello and welcome everyone to another installment of the Story So Far, the video series where I take a longer, more in-depth look at a comic book arc that's already finished up. That way I can do my own commentary and kinda dig a little deeper than I normally would in my other videos, which are more vertical slices. And this time around I am getting to return to the wonderful world of Ms. Marvel, the magnificent Marvel, I should say, under solid admit. I love this series, I love this character, but at the same time, if you watched my last video, I did kind of say that I felt the book was heading into a bit of an awkward middle phase. You know, there were some growing pains going on as we moved from the G. Willow Wilson era to the Solid in a Mid era, and yeah, so let's hop right into that then, shall we? Now, a lot had actually been happening with Ms. Marvel when last we left. She had been to space, she got a brand new costume, and her father had actually become quite ill with a mysterious disease that no one could actually get to the bottom of, and that's really where this newest arc begins. Kamala had called in some favors with Iron Man, and of course Iron Man went and got Doctor Strange because, well, not only is he a superhero, but he's also a doctor. In fact, he's more of a doctor than he's ever been before. He finally got his hands working again and has become a surgeon once more, and he believes that he may actually have gotten to the root of what is wrong with Ms. Marvel's father. Now, it's strange who actually theorizes that perhaps the thing that is making Kamala's dad sick may actually be connected to his Inhuman heritage. Yeah, feels like a long time since Marvel brought up the fact that Ms. Marvel is an Inhuman. Not that, you know, they're embarrassed by it or anything, but the idea seems to be is that when the Terrigen Mist spread across Earth, some people had their powers activated, but other people, like Kamala's dad, had ancient sickness activated in him, which I think is actually kind of a cool concept. Now, this actually becomes a pretty big problem because human doctors naturally don't know how to deal with inhuman sicknesses, and the Terrigen Mist is just as steeped in ancient mysticism and ritual as it is alien science. Because of that, Doctor Strange himself has taken it upon himself to cure Kamala's father, and he's going to be running his procedure personally, which, you know, hey, pretty good to have friends in high places in the superhero community, right? I wonder what the copay is going to be on Doctor Strange coming to help you out. Now, all throughout this very troubling, very emotionally stressful time, Kamala has her good friend Bruno to, you know, kind of hang on to. Their relationship has evolved a lot since the series started. They had this kind of will they, won't they romance thing going on for a long time. In fact, before the universe kind of rewrote itself after the events of Secret Wars, they were actually about to kiss and about to become a couple. And in fact, this arc specifically in this volume called Stormranger actually very much involves their evolving romance, and in fact by the end of this story we're going to see they become a lot closer, but instead of making things easier, that ends up unlocking a whole bunch of new challenges neither of them could have expected. Now, because nothing can ever go easy in the life of a young hero, it just so happens that this very same hospital that Ms. Marvel and her family are at ends up coming under attack by Mr.Hyde. A rather interesting villain choice when we stop and consider that his daughter is actually the Inhuman Quake, and we were again just reminded of Ms. Marvel's Inhuman heritage. It seems that a very dumb, very short-sighted doctor at this hospital named Caesar had stolen some of Mr. Hyde's formula and was attempting to copy it. To what end? I don't know. Something profit. Isn't that always the way? That means Ms. Marvel has to run Mr. Hyde off, not only to protect her father, but to protect everyone in this hospital, even though doing so means she has to leave her family at literally the worst possible time when they need her the most. It's here too, Bruno once again shows how valuable he is to Kamala, both as a friend and an ally. He actually helps her parents escape, and then spends pretty much the rest of the arc trying to cover for her and make up excuses as to why she ran away at such a sensitive time in her family's life right now when they don't know if their father is going to live or die. It's all really good stuff, and it all comes to a major head at the end of the issue when Bruno manages to see Kamala off as she is forced to chase after Mr. Hyde, and he eventually just comes out and says what's been on his mind, what I'm sure lots of fans have wanted to hear him say since forever. He says, you know, I love you, I'm going to be here for you, and in fact, they even kiss, and it's very nice. It's not her first kiss, though. That was actually with Red Dagger, and I covered that in a previous video, but yes, it's finally the big two characters you've wanted to see get together for so long, finally get together and take that next step in their romantic relationship, and it's very sweet. Now, Ms. Marvel will spend the next issue trying to chase Mr. Hyde all over New York. He's in a kill-crazy rampage right now, and she's the only hero around who can stop him. Now, Hyde, despite being a big bruiser, is also a scientist. He's not stupid, and eventually he manages to riddle out that Ms. Marvel is susceptible to electricity attacks. And in fact, there's a moment there where you think, man, he might actually kill her, but her brand new alien costume, which again, we discussed in a previous episode of the story so far, actually kind of comes to life, takes over, and protects her from this attack. But it doesn't stop there. Once Hyde is incapacitated, the suit figures, well, he's the major threat in the area, so I might as well kill him. This means Kamala essentially has to fight against her suit to make sure that Mr. Hyde isn't murdered. We had actually seen this in the previous arc with the villain Monopoly, where it seemed like the suit kind of had a mind of its own and was acting on its own accord, and here it's made 100% official that yes, the suit does have a mind of its own, and it's got a kill-crazy mind of its own. In the end, Kamala is actually forced to banish the suit from her body, which takes a bit of her DNA and uses it to form a brand new being called Stormranger, which is kind of cool, and you're probably thinking to yourself, wow, this is really similar to Spider-Man and the Black Suit story arc, isn't it? Yeah, it totally is. In fact, when Kamala got this new costume, I had made that very same reference myself, that man, this is just a straight up and down tribute to the Black Suit arc, and in fact, I had no idea how right I actually was. This also means, too, that by the end of this story, Kamala's gonna have to go back to her old costume, which is honestly what I kind of wanted anyway. I made a big fuss about the fact that I didn't love the new costume, and well, looks like I get my way at the end of all of this. I have to wonder, was this always Solid Dynamite's plan moving forward? Was this always going to be the big tribute and the big fake out, or was this something that came down from up high where it's like, whoa, Ms. Marvel's going to be in more things now, she's going to be in that Avengers game, she's getting a TV show soon, maybe we should keep the original costume for a little bit longer, or maybe this was always the plan. I don't know, and maybe we won't know. Now, as I mentioned, the Stormranger suit is a cold, clinical killing machine that, wants to stop at nothing to protect its host, in this case being Kamala, and that means ending the life of Hyde. In fact, we get a very cool scene where Kamala blocks a killing blow to Hyde from the suit itself. This means our hero has to basically protect a bad guy that was trying to kill her not 5 minutes ago from her own costume, and do it without a costume too. In fact, we actually get a very fun scene wherein some Ms. Marvel fans who are walking around Jersey City actually help Kamala by giving her some of their clothes so she can cover her face and everything. It's, again, it's fun to have a hero who still has to worry about protecting their secret identity when it seems like so many heroes are kind of out about their identity, so, that's always a fun little wrinkle to put in all of this. Kamala is eventually able to drop Mr. Hyde off with the cops, which you think would end the fight right there and end the threat, but no, again, the Stormranger suit is a machine, it is a computer, and it figures, well, that's the biggest threat dealt with, I guess I'll go deal with the second biggest threat now, which is actually the villain Discord, which Ms. Marvel had fought a couple arcs back. Discord is also, you may remember, Josh, actually classmate and former friend of Kamala, who had gone to the dark side when he hooked up with Hydra, and now the suit is out to try and kill him, again, very Terminator style. It's while trying to give chase to Stormranger that Kamala actually almost drowns in the Hudson River, and she probably would too if Bruno wasn't screwing around with trying to make his own Fantastic Four-style flying vehicle. Again, Bruno, smart guy, got a Wakandan scholarship and everything, and the reminding here that, he's more than just the boyfriend, he's more than just the Alfred, he can actually pull his weight. Although he does have a very Alfred moment in this story when he's like, hey, I was actually sitting on one of your old costumes anyway, just for nostalgia's sake, and it's probably a good thing I have it now because that suit's trying to kill you, time to put on the OG one. Now, it's right around here we hit what I guess you could call the big main event of this story. Doctor Strange is working away on Kamala's dad, and he thinks he may finally have figured out how to cure him. So many of his Inhuman cells are breaking down right now that if he could get an infusion of fresh, healthy Inhuman cells, say from, I don't know, maybe someone who's a genetic match to him like his daughter, that could probably fix him right up. But if he has to wait too long, he probably isn't going to be able to do it. In fact, there might be some unrepairable damage done. The only problem is Ms. Marvel cannot be in two places at once, and so she is essentially given this impossible Sophie's choice. Does she go stop her costume from killing Discord, a bad person, but also a person she knows full well, or does she run off to save her father? Again, this is that impossible heroic choice that, heroes really have to decide what they're made of and what they're going to do. In fact, Bruno once again gets a really great scene in this story where he's like, well, it's obvious you go in to help your dad, right? That's your family. Family comes first. Only for Ms.Marvel to say, when you're a hero, not always. When you're a hero, sometimes you're forced to, deal with the greater good, even if that means people you know and love end up suffering. And yeah, she goes to try and protect Josh from her costume, which at this point, the costume, I think the idea is that it can't keep like a bipedal human form the more it kind of overtaxes itself and the more energy it uses, so it becomes much more monstrous, much more kind of insectoid and Slenderman. It's very creepy. It's a very good design. Ms.Marvel realizes that she probably doesn't have to defeat the costume so much as she has to fight it to the point that it's going to overclock and overtax itself and basically just burn itself out, which is exactly what happens. The only problem is that takes a lot of time to do, time that her father could very well be dying. Eventually, Kamala is able to make it back to the hospital and give Doctor Strange the cells that he needs. Her father will live for now, but apparently, as the Doctor Strange tells it, a lot of damage has actually been already done, and that, he may never be the same again. What does that actually mean in terms of the story? Well, he's going to be walking with a cane for the next little bit. I know that might not seem much in the greater scheme of, dying, but I mean, honestly, that's pretty rough to know for Kamala that, her dad is going to have to walk with a cane now for the rest of his life, that he's hobbled because of her, because, she had to do the right thing as a superhero instead of doing right by her family, and it's pretty rough and it's pretty emotional and everything. If one good thing came about this event, though, Kamala and Bruno are now officially a couple. Well, officially, unofficially. You see, the way Kamala tells it, her life is so crazy right now. She's being pulled in so many different directions, and she really doesn't want to give her parents any more reason for worry. So she says, hey, can we keep the fact that we're dating and together now, kind of quiet moving into the future? And because Bruno is just a nice, understanding dude, he totally agrees. Although this arrangement will definitely be challenged in the next part of the story. This is technically where this Stormranger arc ends, but the next kind of bonus issue is interesting too, because we actually get introduced to a brand new character, Amulet. In fact, let's talk about launching new characters for a second. I feel like launching this brand new character was also a bit of a growing test for the magnificent Ms.Marvel book, because as you know, you can be a successful hero in Marvel Comics, you can be a big deal, but one of the, yardsticks to testing that is, can you launch another character in the pages of your book? Because, I mean, let's stop and think about it. How many classic characters spun out of the pages of Fantastic Four? How many big deal characters spun out of the pages of Spider-Man? And I feel like Amulet trying to launch him here was also kind of a test for this book, because I mean, when you really break it down, Ms.Marvel Kamala Khan is probably like one of the biggest success stories for modern Marvel characters, and it was a real kind of grassroots thing that got the character going. So now it is like, all right, let us see your power, let us see your reach on this. Can you actually launch someone else? So as this little one-shot begins, we actually get to see Kamala trying to help out her father, who again is walking with a cane now, is, going a lot slower than ever before, but he's in good spirits, and he actually wants, Kamala to kind of have a day for herself, to have some fun, so she decides to go off to the, Jersey County Fair. In fact, there's a very sweet, very funny joke in here, where, the dad kind of lets her go to hang out with her friends, and he says, make good choices out there, and only for Kamala to say, where on earth did you hear that? And he says, oh, I heard one of the gory women talk about it. Gory, which I think is like slang for Caucasian, and honestly, I had heard that term, make good choices, so many times from my own aunt with her kids that, that just made me smile instantly, because like, ooh, the accuracy of that statement. Now, it's at the fair Kamala meets Bruno, and he's, excited to spend, kind of their first day out as boyfriend and girlfriend. But here's the thing, Kamala doesn't want to actually reveal that they're boyfriend and girlfriend yet to her group of friends, which rightly so kind of hurts Bruno's feelings. It's one thing to lie to your parents, it's another thing to lie to our peers and everything, especially because, you let your friends in on the secret that you're Ms.Marvel while your parents don't know. And yeah, he actually kind of storms off on this one, and, I think Some people might have a problem with this scene. Personally, I kind of enjoyed it because it's like, yeah, this is the sort of things teenagers do to one another, and I think it kind of helps counter-program the idea where it's like, oh, Ms. Marvel, she's too perfect, everything always works out for her. Not always. Another thing about Bruno that, makes me think in relationship to her father who has to walk with a cane, Bruno got hurt really bad too, but he got kind of like a Wakandan exoskeleton so he can walk around. Can't they just build one of those for her dad? That hits me right now when I think about it. I wonder if that's going to be a thing. Now, it's while hanging out at the county fair, Kamala and her friends end up running into a very phony fortune teller with an unfortunately very real cursed magical item that ends up summoning a demon. Really cool looking design too, and it's kind of got like this goat devil thing with multiple arms. I really like it. This thing starts rampaging all over the fair, putting a lot of people's lives in danger, and it actually starts mopping the floor with Ms. Marvel pretty seriously, and she starts to wonder, wow, was I relying on my spacesuit way too much to protect me and to help me out in combat? It basically feels like she's starting all over again in many regards. Luckily, though, she doesn't have to do it alone because she ends up getting backed up by a mysterious new magic-based hero, the Amulet fellow who I was talking about before. Now, this character actually got a fair amount of press before he actually appeared in this issue. This is a solid-in-a-mid original creation and apparently something very near and dear to his heart. We don't actually learn much of this character's backstory in this issue itself, but we know that he is a transfer student from Dearborn, Michigan, where he played football. He is also an Arab American like Kamala herself. He has magic powers, but they're not offensive magic powers. They are all defensive magic powers. He creates shields and everything around him, and that's kind of how he fights and gets the job done. Why Dearborn, Michigan, you might be wondering? Well, turns out Solid in a Mid is also from Dearborn, Michigan, and again, you might be thinking to yourself as a fan and a reader, hey, isn't that a little self-indulgent to write a character who is so similar to you? Well, I mean, Muslim American Kamala Khan, Ms. Marvel from Jersey City, very similar to G. Willow Wilson's backstory, the woman who created her. So, let's just say good writers have been having much success writing what they know and having characters that reflect them. So, it is what it is, for better or worse. This is a very brief one-and-done story. Kamala and Amulet team up. They manage to crack the evil crystal ball that was summoning up the demons. They save the day. They grow a little bit closer. They both kind of like each other. They realize, hey, you probably have a lot of the same struggles I do as a young superhero. Why they even invoke what's going on in Outlaw, that big Champions young superhero crossover story that got put on the back burner, unfortunately, because of this whole coronavirus thing. But she says, man, the law out there is trying to crack down on young heroes, and yet here is another new hero just starting out, and he reminds me so much of me. The comic even kind of ends in a nice coming full circle. Kamala manages to make it home before her curfew, actually, and her father is so happy by this, being like, you're growing into such a mature, trustworthy young woman right now. Tell you what, how about a 9:30 curfew for a change? And it's just a very nice, very sitcom-y, very fun way to end what was ultimately a pretty serious storyline. And so that was the magnificent Ms. Marvel Volume 2 Stormranger on the story so far. And overall, I did enjoy it. I'm definitely more thankful that I got to read this entire arc together because I think it reads nicer in one sitting. I kind of can't help too but compare it to the Ms.Marvel Spider-Man book, which I'd also covered before this on the story so far. They're written by the same person, dealing with a lot of the same themes and ideas, but Amid kind of comes at the characters from two very different ways. In the Miles book, it's kind of more about opening up Spider-Man to everyone, bringing back his Ultimate Universe connections, bringing back his relationship with his uncle. He got a new sibling and kind of like, letting people into his world as Spider-Man. Here in Magnificent Ms. Marvel, it kind of seems like he's going the other way. And that is, he's kind of shrinking Kamala's world, interestingly enough. It's about her trying to protect herself and trying to make it so she's not spread so thin and, kind of trying to protect the world around her. And again, I wonder if this is going to be important moving into Outlawed, as it kind of seemed, even after just one issue, that they were sort of setting up Ms. Marvel and Spider-Man to be these ideological opposites and everything. And I don't know where that's going to go. I'm super happy she's back in the original costume. I was not a fan of the spacesuit. I actually hope Stormranger comes back as a a villain, because as a villain design, I think it works great. As someone who's been following the series from day one, from the G. Willow Wilson stuff, it's nice to see Bruno and Kamala finally get together as a couple, because, you know, they were just so wholesome and so sweet. You know, I was definitely rooting for them as a long-time reader, but I like that it's not easy. I like that Saldin Amid is fully, you know, going into the stuff where it's like, hey, going from best friend to being boyfriend and girlfriend, that's going to cause a lot of trouble, you know, that's a big jump in a relationship. I like that we got the Inhuman connection stuff. Doctor Strange had a fun little cameo here. Yeah, overall, pretty good. Again, I still think that this series is having some growing pains, you know, as we move on kind of into, I guess, like her 5th or 6th year now as a comic character. Again, Ms.Marvel fairly new, but, you know, fairly successful in that time. I definitely think Amid has kind of hit his stride with Miles Morales Spider-Man, and I hope this book hits the stride in a similar way very soon. But until then, everyone, this has been Cape Joel. I hope you've enjoyed this installment of the story so far. As always, if there is an arc or a volume you would like to see me cover in more complexity and more entirety, please let me know down in the comment section below, and I will try and get to that if I can. So until then, everyone, bye-bye.